All right. Next up, we're going to go to an Instagram submitted question from Groundskeeper Frilly.
Yes.
Yep.
I put a bunch of I put out a question saying, what would you like to hear us, like, tech-based question discussed in the next podcast on Instagram. And I'm going to be doing this with different social media platforms to gauge the reaction from everyone. So I did it on Instagram stories. I think we got probably like 15 to 20 questions. There's 2 to 3 good ones in there. I've done it on Facebook before. Maybe next time I'll try Twitter or something. So, but yeah.
So this one from Groundskeeper Frilly is, our company's just cash grabbing customers by making beefed up versions of already good selling boards, like Super DOA for next year, Super Pig for next year. I assume we can also throw in Assassin Pro, Huck Knife Pro, back when they were
Ultra
called
Mind
Classics.
Expander,
Yeah,
Ultra
Mind
Flagship.
Expander, any of
Ultra
those,
Mind
any of those boards where you have your standard version, then you have your premium ultra version on top of that. Some of it, I think so. Yeah.
Well, this is my thoughts on it. There are ones that the name alone will sell because it's super but after riding the Super Pig, it's a completely different board than the War Pig.
Right, and I think that's what you have to go and clarify is the beefed up version genuinely different enough to warrant it being in the line? And I think Solomon's been kind of a victim of that not being the case. I definitely think the Assassin Pro is beefier than the regular Assassin, but when you're
Didn't
talking
used
about,
to be that way though.
yeah,
remember when they did their Classics version?
right. Now I was just gonna say the classic stuff was literally just like a lighter core and a nicer base, and that was it.
Different graphic.
And a different graphic, and sometimes the graphic was better, but at the same time, like they're charging 50 to 60 extra bucks or whatever for really nothing. It was just that it was fancier. And
super.
For that, absolutely. All they're doing is just adding SKUs and giving you a reason to spend it a little extra dollars. But when it comes to stuff like you have, for instance, Mind Expander, Ultra Mind Expander, it's a different camber profile between them. So they are genuinely different boards, even if they ride somewhat similar, which you can only speak to that.
They don't. So just to go into Mind Expander, Ultra Mind Expander, they are 2 different boards. Same shape, same concept, but the Mind Expander is more like that surfy, laid-back pow board, and the Ultra Mind Expander is more precision-based. There's more snap to it. It's a more aggressive, a more energy-driven board. It's like saying that the Super Pig is just the beefed-up War Pig. They ride entirely different.
Right.
Those are 2 different boards. But to go back to Solomon, and it's like with the Classics or the Pro version, the Huck Knife and the Huck Knife Pro, there's a little more snap out of the Huck Knife Pro. It's a little stiffer, not much. The Assassin to the Assassin Pro, there is a difference in there, but what else did they have? They had another one that was it, did they do Villain? No, they didn't do Villain Pro. They did Villain Classics, though.
Do they still have Classics?
No, they don't have Classics anymore, but more premium one. The one I'm really curious about is Super DOA. That's the one.
Yeah,
unfortunately, they didn't have one to send us to ride. That's one I haven't gotten a chance to ride.
Like the DOA is already pretty beef.
It's funny that everyone, because their marketing doesn't list it as beefy. Actually, they list it as middle of the road.
It's not.
It's not. It's stiffer than that. Like they list the Simulator as being stiffer than the DOA. It's not. Like, from what I remember, it's been a while since I've ridden the DOA, but the newest Simulator is just the Spring Break Twin. And the Spring Break Twin, I love the Simulator. I'm just going to say it right now. It's probably not going back to Capita. I'm going to just buy the fucking thing because I love that board so much. It was such a good ride. But some of these boards, I do think that they are just a straight cash grab.
And it's pretty easy to, even just looking through the catalog, it's pretty easy to determine which boards are definitely not just cash grabs. Like we're talking about Ultra Mind Expander versus Mind Expander. They changed the current camber profile. You look at War Pig versus Super Pig. It's a different camber profile.
It's a different board.
Yeah,
it's a completely
the reason for that is that they want to continue the pig name, but they're kind of running out of pig names. So Super Pig. That doesn't it's not Super War Pig. It's Super Pig. So it's just within the Pig line, and it's their super version.
Well, I
of a
think that's
volume
because
ship.
Spider Pig was actually trademarked.
Probably, yeah. Okay. But then you get stuff. I'm trying to get some of the others out there. Like with DOA, Super DOA, so during SA on snow, I talked to a lot of people that did get a chance to ride it. I ran out of time. And I didn't hear anybody say they didn't like it. And even people that I talked to that didn't really like regular DOA were having a good time on Super DOA. So there may be something to it that makes it better than DOA, but I find it hard to believe that it's what you would attribute to being called super, that it's stiffer, snappier, more stable, more aggressive. I find it hard to believe it's that, just because of how already a little bit more kind of beefier and stiffer that the DOA actually is.
Right.
But I don't know. I mean, realistically what it was when they put super in front of the name is they just put a bunch of expensive shit in it.
Well, then you look at Jones, and there's Mountain Twin, Ultra Mountain Twin, Hovercraft, Ultra Hovercraft, Flagship, Ultra Flagship, or Carbon Flagship, or whatever the fuck they call it. But you get where I'm going with that.
Yeah.
In my opinion, from Mountain Twin to Ultra Mountain Twin, it's not enough of a difference.
Yeah.
You're going from dental hygienist assistant to dentist board.
Yep.
Same thing with the Flagship in there. It's not as much of a noticeable difference, in my opinion. And like with the Flagship, in my opinion, I'd rather ride the regular Flagship than the Ultra because it dampens better because it's got more wood in it and less carbon.
Right.
So, I mean, unless you really need that Ultra snap of carbon, that drive, I don't think it's there. So I think it's kind of a split decision where some of them, it is a cash grab. And some of them, it does make sense.
Yeah.
And I also just think that a lot of people are just getting a little lazy with their marketing. And they're like, well, or they're trying to make it easier for themselves where they're like, well, we'll just call it the super version of this or the pro version or whatever. And that way they can keep the marketing very similar and have it carry over, and it's less work in the long
run. Right. But, and they're just trying to cash in on an already successful name.
Yeah. That too. You're it's like custom X. They're really not the same board at all.
No, not at all.
And then custom Kilroy's in there.
Right.
And it's like
and that's all just cashing in on custom.
Yep.
So
there's
totally.
It's some brands do it better than others, I guess. I don't know. I was trying to think if like Mervin had anything like that.
Yeah, Mervin does actual pro models, so they don't really do super versions. I guess you could argue that when they used to do, I guess you could argue like the construction differences. Like there used to be Travis Rice horsepower, and Travis Rice firepower. So they made that board in 3 different levels of construction, and I think the basalt additive going from regular construction to horsepower construction was definitely a big benefit, and it took the boards from soggy logs into something that actually had some life and snap to them. But then you look at boards like the TRS had always bothered me in that sense when you were spending near $700 for a board with an extruded base, which, whether you have your preferences on extruded versus centered, at the same time, a $700 board should have a centered base, period. So at that point, they were just cashing in on the horsepower name to get $700, and they dropped everything to $600, and then they became the brand of $600 boards. But so I don't know. So Lib Mervin, kinda. I guess in the Lib line, you have Gold Member and you have Climax, which is the same board. The Climax is the fanciest of the fancy constructions in it, and it's like $900. And I've ridden both Gold Member and Climax, and Climax is vaguely lighter. But other than that, there's no difference at that point. So there's I guess you could argue that it's Mervin's version of it.
Well, I think a few other brands have done stuff like that too, but it's or like Never Summer has done it with some of their stuff. Like they had like Proto CT, and
right.
They had like certain boards that were staggered like that, and I was like, I'm like, really? You're gonna try to charge more and say it's more premium when you put a rental top sheet on it?
Right. So
But
so yeah, you just gotta use your brain a little bit and just kind of try to read through the marketing of it all.
Well, if anything, go look at the components and see if they overlap. If there's an overlap in components, like 90% of it, is it really worth it? Because Nidecker, they have the Pro Pipe for next year, and they have the Merc. The Merc is a carryover from Flow, which was like a beginner intermediate hybrid cambered board. Now it's a cam rocker board, and it's supposed to be for progressing freestyle, and they use that shape and everything for the Pro Pipe. Yet the Pro Pipe is actually stiffer. I rode it. They're both the same size board. The only difference between the Pro Pipe and the Mercury on paper is the base material. The base material is higher end on the Pro Pipe. And like I really didn't notice much difference on the Mercury in that. Where I noticed was that Mercury was fucking soft compared to the Pro Pipe, which was more like middle of the road. And I mean, we're splitting hairs here with that, but those two, you know, I mean, it's essentially the exact same board with a retro graphic.
Right. So. And that's, to me, that's not necessarily trying to cash in with the super concept, because it's not really it's adding a board to the line, but it's a graphic concept. That was the purpose of that. Was to be that kind of graphical nostalgia collector.
But they're charging more, and some of their throwback stuff. If you look at it, I mean, it's because like the Liberty and the Mellow are the same board,
right?
But the Liberty has more torsional flex to it. But I think there is a price difference. I'm pretty sure.
I mean, that would make sense to me though. Like if you're going and looking that line and you use any sort of brain power whatsoever to realize that like Liberty Mellow same board, but you want the Liberty because of the cool graphic. Well, that makes sense. Whereas DOA Super DOA, are those really the same board, except there's just more exotic materials in the Super DOA, and at that point they're just charging you extra for the exotic materials, and the board doesn't ride any different. And that I think is where you run into a problem with super models, is kind of that. Like the way that I see like the Pro Pipe and the Liberty is the same way that I see like the RK1 series on Rome.
Right.
Where there is a vague difference, like with the next year, the Alec Ravine versus the regular Ravine. The Alec Ravine is a little stiffer. But I don't know if they advertise that or not. I haven't really looked into that. But like, I also don't know if there's a price difference. There might be. But
there is all the RK series, I think it's either $30 or $50.
Yeah,
something like that.
But you know that you're buying it because it's the Pro Models graphic. Yeah. And I kind of see that as that's kind of what that series is from Nidecker. Is it's a Pro Model series without Pro Models, more or less, without the Pro's name on it. I guess not that they have it Pro's writing at all, but that's same vague concept. It's kind of the way I see that stuff. But so that kind of falls more into, I think, the Pro Model version of the board that's already in the line type of thing. Yeah. So, yeah, just kind of look at it. Look at the specs, like Aaron was saying. If it's a couple things here and there, but the core of what the board is, the major pieces of what make that board in their line didn't change, and they just changed a couple small things, then, yeah, probably cash grab, and it's not going to ride drastically different. Or, look for us to do the reviews of it. Hopefully we get a chance to ride Super DOA in the fall to let you know whether it really is any different. And it may not be. It may literally just be an expensive DOA. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah, I thought they were going to send it, but I think somebody else needed it. I think it was a limited sample run. Because at one point they were like, yeah, we're going to send you that. And then the next day it was like, we're going to send you these. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least they sent some stuff.
Yep.
So that's kind of the big thing.
So that's kind of answer to that question. Hopefully it was a satisfactory enough answer for you.